What's up, y'all? Got another one for you. Hope you're just doing. You ain't gotta be doing all right. I know a lot of us aren't. It's gonna be a different type of video. I'm talking about suffering and how it's important. I think I might have made a video about this before, but it's kind of the mood that I'm in. Got a nice overcast day for it too, so I thought I'd bring it out for today. Make it more most of my videos I'm sitting on the couch in a pretty decent mood. Not always cheerful, but try to be optimistic. But I'm gonna show this other side of me too, where it's kind of laying on the couch, not really doing a whole lot, just kind of existing and resting and reflecting on life and what got me here. Because I know how important it is. Like I always say, I don't believe in free will, and I believe, for the most part, most of what we do is for our best interest and for our benefit. So every time I am laying on the couch or on the bed, kind of just existing, I know it's for my benefit. I know my body and my mind's definitely going to be getting a whole lot out of it. But yeah, it's talking about suffering and how, in order for you to achieve anything and really find any purpose or meaning in life, you have to suffer. You kind of have to really feel what's going on. You know what I'm saying? This really has to be something that's in the forefront of your mind, and gotta kind of make something of it. Find some meaning out of it, and really get to the bottom of it. You know, kind of going over part of my suffering is a lot of acceptance. Accepting the people who are in my life and what role they play currently and what role they play, in my past. Accepting my family for what they are and who they are. Always having love for them, but understanding that part of suffering and acceptance is realizing, their roles might not be as impactful or as important as you might have thought or seemed. Society wants you to be super close to them, to your, blood relatives at least, but a lot of the times you really can't, because they're your first and your biggest enemies a lot of the time. They're your biggest critics, and they hold you back from your potential. I know they did for me. Even though I always loved them, they never really had my best interest in heart. Overall, I shouldn't really say that. It was mostly they were just doing what they had to do to survive, and they didn't really take how I felt too much into it. They were just trying to do what they had to do. I ain't mad at them, but at the same time, I gotta do what's best for me. And I always known that, or come to terms with the fact that I've done so much growth, and I have just achieved pretty much the vast majority of my goals without them in my life directly. You know, that's something that I'm coming to terms with, especially reflecting on whether or not I should or how to kind of integrate them back into my life if I want to. Thinking about that, thinking about who and how and what that looks like. I know at the end of the day, it's going to happen. Whether or not it's going to happen is predetermined. So it's like I'm not going to work. I'm not going to think too much of it. But at the same time, I do want to get myself ready for that conversation. And thinking of, should I even entertain it, or what I should do? Who my family is, who my close people are. Same thing with friends. I'm kind of accepting those people for who they are and understanding that I'm only going to probably have at the very maximum like 7 people who are going to be close to me throughout my life, and that's honestly pretty good. I feel like, I think I made a video about the friend epidemic. I feel like all throughout life, most people didn't have that many people that were close to them. They might have had 2 or 3, 4 people max that were close. And everybody else was pretty much acquaintances. They were convenient friends. They weren't actually people who they were close to, because they didn't actually go into depth about like who they are and what they believed. These are concepts that we are just now adopting in the 20th century. This wasn't something that the average person really did. You were just cool with the people who you were around. It wasn't really not too much depth to it. So I feel like people are just coming to terms with the fact that we just don't have that many people that we're close to, and a lot of people are pretty lonely. I've never really been lonely, but I've always been alone. Spent the vast majority of my life, by myself. I was never by myself. I always had people, lack of a better word, obsessing over me. I get that. I appreciate it in a way, but at the same time, I definitely never really felt fully seen because of how they felt about themselves. It was never really personal. It was never really anything that I did or who I am. It's just I was just very unapologetically me, and that could be very intimidating for a lot of people. I get that when they were struggling to accept themselves. So me doing that was, especially at a very young age, I can definitely understand why they kept their distance. So me being alone for most of my life, even though I had, my family there, and I spent most of my adolescence by myself in isolation, which made me the man that I am today. That's why I attract so many people, because of my authenticity. There's definitely some days where not days, but just moments where I'm like, man, I really wish I had more people close to me, but also understanding that I couldn't be who I am if that was the case. There's a lot of people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum as me when it comes to that, and they wish they didn't have as many people around them. They wish they had some time by themselves in isolation, that they're constantly being bombarded by other people and their wants and needs and feelings. So I understand how lucky I am in that aspect. At the same time, everybody wants what they can't have. So I understand that I will eventually keep doing this, keep being me, keep, putting myself out there. I will find people who I can truly connect with. I think I even found someone recently, but I gotta make sure that we're both okay before we even dive into that. Because I've been reflecting on my past relationships too. I've only been in 3 meaningful ones, and 2 of them were only for a couple of months. But the one I've been in the longest was about 4 years, and it was crazy because I never really thought, I never would have imagined me and her being that relationship ended up being like the most healthy one out of all of them. On paper, the other 2, we just looked better together. We had a lot in common. We were, on paper, we were just kind of made for each other, but at the same time, I didn't realize at the time that those were pretty much going to ultimately just be trauma bonds. They weren't really actually going to be anything of substance for the both of us long term. I was just trying to heal something inside of me that was there since my childhood, and I was using them for that, and they're probably using me for that as well. So overall, hopefully, I can speak for myself. I learned a lot from that one, from both of those. But the 4-year one, that one was something I didn't expect, because I didn't really want it at first. But like I said, everybody wants what they can't have, and I didn't realize that relationship was needed. It was very therapeutic. I definitely trusted myself and ended up trusting other people, because she did treat me very well. Overall, it was definitely very telling. It definitely showed a lot of my flaws. It led to me even going to therapy, because I knew how I was acting, and my behavior wasn't something I wanted to do. It was just something that I was taught, and I just learned it. It was part of who I am. I can't deny it, but I didn't have to keep embracing that side of me. Being so. I was always optimistic, but I was always kind of an asshole, and I didn't really fully unlocked the empathy that I have today. Back then, that was, 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, where I really started to empathize with myself. I think I said in the other video, if you want to be kind to people, you gotta be kind to yourself. And I wasn't being kind to myself at all, not even close. I was being very hard on myself because like I said, that's all I knew. That's all I really knew was cruelty towards me from other people. So I just kind of internalized it for the majority of my life, and it made me who I am today. I'm not going to sit up here and bitch and moan about it. I appreciate me being cruel to myself to a degree, but I have to also give myself kindness if I want to receive it. And ever since I've done that, I've been receiving a lot of kindness from people. I've always have, but I've been receiving a huge heaping of it recently. So I'm definitely grateful for that. Even in today's climate, a lot of people have been very kind to me, so I am very grateful for that. I appreciate them. That's also part of the suffering I like to do every once in a while. Is I try to get a good mix of the good and the bad experiences that I've been through and try to make something out of them. But yeah, going back to in the 4-year relationship, it didn't work out because we just weren't compatible with each other when it comes to like bonding. I'm realizing that you got to kind of bond with people before you can even think about starting a relationship with them. We didn't really do that. We kind of, from my perspective, from my end, I should say, I was more so worried about making sure that she was good. I placed her over the relationship, her and her wants and needs. I definitely did that, which I'm glad I did. I understand that was the reason why it lasted so long. I truly did care about her, and she cared about me. But throughout the relationship, it definitely became apparent that she was trying to keep it going, even though we weren't as compatible, and I wasn't getting a lot of my needs met. And once I started opening up more about who I am and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, she was just being supportive, but she wasn't really actually being active in it. It was like, had to pull the plug on that one, which was hard. It was difficult, but it definitely needed to be done. But I learned so much from it. It made me the man that I am today, more so than any relationship I've ever been in. So I'm definitely grateful for it, which leads to this new one that I might be starting, where I know now from that one that I need to not only prioritize who that person is, but I also need to make sure that I'm getting my needs met by bonding with someone and making sure that I am actually happy within the relationship. I'm always going to be happy with myself, but I can't sacrifice that just to be partnered with someone. That's definitely not. I'm learning from looking at other people and seeing how they are just not happy in their relationships, not only with themselves, but with their partners, their kids, their families, all that fun stuff. They're just not happy, and I will not sacrifice my happiness for anything. So I gotta make sure that I'm good and she is good, and we can both actually make something beautiful out of it, and not also put like a whole bunch of restrictions on it as well. Accept it for what it is. Nothing lasts forever, but if you can go get a good run out of it, make it happen. Do what you got to do. I think suffering has to come first. I think we're both kind of going through that at the same time. That's why we're kind of keeping our distance, which is healthy, which is a good sign. I'm glad we're both doing that. We both agreed on it. I'm doing a lot of suffering now, a lot of accepting things for what they are and where I want to be, letting go of a lot of stuff, a lot of things, a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, just so I can make room for the new version of me. I ain't gonna say the new version. The version of me I always wanted to tap into, but I just had to worry about the shit that was in front of me, things that's going on in my life personally. Now I got to get rid of that in order to accept my new life. I got to get rid of the old one, There's a few more obstacles in my way that hopefully by the end of the year they'll be gone and I can start really doing what I've been wanting to do since I was a kid, start living my dreams with the people I want to be living them with. But that takes, time. Gotta be patient. So in the meantime, these days of suffering, they really come in handy. Just laying on the couch, not doing a whole lot, or the bed, or just sitting someplace outside, reflecting, thinking, just going over life. It's very cathartic. A lot of people feel bad about doing these things, feel like they're not being productive, but it's like this is the most productive thing you can possibly do. We just been kind of conditioned to think that if we're not constantly progressing, we're not actually doing anything. We're not actually being productive members of society. But sometimes doing nothing is like the best thing you can do, or doing the bare minimum, I guess you can say. And it's reflecting, doing a lot of checking in on yourself and being like going over scenarios that happen in your life. Like, hey, was I kind of harsh with that person earlier that day? I kind of had a court date today, and the prosecutor was kind of asking me what my goals were, because it was a pre-trial today for my trial next month, and he was kind of asking me, my side of the story and kind of what I wanted to do. I thought was kind of unnecessary because I already went to court a few months ago telling them I wanted to plead not guilty. I wanted a trial. So the fact that this is a pre-trial to see if I still wanted to plead not guilty or plead guilty was kind of weird to me. But he didn't really understand why I didn't want to plead guilty to it, because it was a misdemeanor. It was no points or anything. It was a traffic case, and he was kind of confused why I wanted to take it to trial. It was going to cost all this money. And it's like that kind of irks me that the prosecutor just wants people just to plead. I mean, I understand why. They just want to move on, get their cases over and done with, and all that fun stuff. But at the same time, I told him, like, this is bigger than me. I need this case on record because I have another case coming up that I want to do. I have my own lawsuit I want to do. I'm working on it. I need this case to build that case. He wasn't understanding me. I'm like, guess you're not understanding me, man, but you're the prosecutor. You don't need to understand me. You just need to understand that I want to take this to court. And he was just kind of pushing back against that. I was kind of being an asshole to him, reflecting on it and being like, did I do too much? Should I have been kinder? This, that, and the third. It's just, once again, I think I'm going back into not being kind to myself and being like I was being very kind to him at first. I did explain to him what I was doing, this, that, and the third. I was actually, giving him a good, clear picture of what was going on. He just wasn't understanding it. I definitely can come across as a little strange or weird to people, but I told him, like, there's a method to the madness, and there's a reason why I'm doing this, and I kind of expected him just to kind of be like, accept the fact that I'm not going to take a plea. I'm not going to plead guilty. I want to take it to court. And I told him that. I want to take it to court. He kept pushing back on it. So I feel like me being aggressive with him and saying, hey, stop talking to me. I got up and I walked out. I feel like that was needed at that moment. I don't think he would have, got the picture if I didn't do that, because he just kept going and kept going and kept going and kept being like, I don't understand. Just do this. Why don't you just plead guilty? It's like, I don't want to. I told you I pled not guilty the first time. Why do I gotta plead not guilty a second time? Why do I gotta take time out of my day to come here and tell you that I'm going to continue with the court case? Why do you expect people to plead guilty? That makes no sense. Why even have a legal system? Why even have trials if you expect people just to constantly plead not guilty because it's more convenient? You know what I'm saying? That's why so many people don't even trust our legal system, because they just expect people just to be like, oh, I'm guilty of this, that, and the third, and it's just, long story short, I am glad that I'm reflecting on whether that I could have handled that a little bit differently. So next time I'm in a similar situation with someone who isn't kind of understanding me, I can continue leading with kindness and understanding that they just aren't going to understand me. I just got to kind of keep it short, sweet, to the point, and if they aren't getting it, just kind of remove myself from the situation versus letting myself get heated and just kind of going off on people, which I didn't, but I definitely almost did if I didn't get up and leave, because he just wasn't understanding why I wasn't pleading guilty when I already pled not guilty. And I told him I wanted to take it to court because I want this on record that I pled not guilty, and I want to explain myself and say my side of the story. He just didn't get it. It's just, you're the prosecutor. You're not supposed to get it. You're supposed to do your job and prosecute. We're not friends. You know what I'm saying? I gotta explain nothing to you. But I did because I wanted to be kind. So it is what it is. But I'm glad that I reflected on it to begin with. A lot of people just brush it off as another day and just keep it pushing. But I'm like, hey, what could I have done better next time I'm in that situation with someone, who isn't kind of understanding me or understanding the method to my madness. This definitely is madness out here. But overall, I'm not mad at myself. I know I did what I was supposed to do. I didn't have a choice of doing that. He didn't have a choice, so I'm not mad at him either. Not holding a grudge. If he wants to come at me at our trial, it is what it is. Like I said, I know what I'm going to be doing at the trial anyway. I know what it's for. I think the judge knows what it's for too. I don't think he does. I think he's in the dark about while I'm doing what I'm doing. But I think the judge knows why I'm going to be there. So we'll get things going. We'll get things rolling on that end. But I'm definitely glad for these suffering days. I'm not going to get a whole lot done today. But I'm glad I'm not getting a whole lot productive done. I'm just doing a lot of mind, a lot of that good hard work, that reflecting, working on myself, as people say, and just doing that today, just existing, what I'm saying? Getting ready for tomorrow and just being optimistic for the future. I know the future's bright. It really is. Things are not as bad as people say it is. We're just constantly, our brains always hyper fixate on the negative. We don't really think about the positive, but the positive's right in front of us. We just can't see the forest through the trees sometimes. But suffering is definitely part of this process, and just thinking about where I want to be and who I want to do things with is part of it. So I am grateful the fact that I even have a opportunity to have someone who can understand me, and partner up with someone, and we can do great things together, beautiful things together. They even want to do those things with me is a beautiful thing as well. Having people who care about me, having people who believe in me, who I have admirers, I guess the best way I can explain that. People who see what I'm doing and cheering me on, and understanding that my bravery will be rewarded. It always has been, it always will be. I'm doing a whole lot for a whole lot of people. They see that, so I appreciate that. So it keeps me going. At the same time, I still gotta suffer. You know what I'm saying? No matter how I look at it, how I slice it, I still gotta do this work because it's part of it. Part of what makes us human. I have a lot of days I'm just sitting here, just thinking about what's next, what's in front of me, what's behind me, what's going on, and how I can just be a better version. Improve from who I was yesterday. That's all we could do. But that's pretty much the majority of this yap session, kind of showing this side of me that I don't really show. But I think it's probably for the best that people start documenting themselves, especially people who you think that their lives are perfect or everything's going great, or they have everything that they ever wanted. It's not like that. Most people are faking it till they make it. Most people are putting on a performance, and a lot of people are doing this, laying on their couch, reflecting, suffering, doing that good, meaningful suffering because it's worth it. It truly, truly is. And I'm glad that I'm doing it. I'm glad that I know I have to do it. That's the main thing. I'm glad that I really accepted this as growth. That's part of it. It's part of the evolution of our species, is to suffer. We got to do it every once in a while. It's for our benefit. So hopefully you guys are doing some good suffering too. And yeah, I'll catch y'all later.